Hello, and welcome to yet another episode of the Back to the TARDIS podcast, the podcast where we take a look at every single episode of the 2005 revival of BBC's Doctor Who. I'm Jeff.
I'm Skylar.
And I'm the mysteriously talking parent.
And this week we are discussing Series 4, Episodes 8 and 9, Silence in the Library and Forest of the Dead by Stephen Moffat. This was notable. I actually learned by reading a review that was written at the time that the episode aired that at that point Stephen Moffat had already been announced to be the new showrunner.
Okay, that explains like some of my questions I had about the two-parter.
Yeah.
Does
Yeah,
like
makes
everything
sense.
with the River Song?
Like I don't
Everything
don't know if he was when he was writing it, but he definitely was announced like by the time that episode had aired, because the review mentioned it. And because this is the introduction of River Song, I also feel it also kind of is an introduction to, well, there's still like some flavors of like RTD like darkness in it. It very much, like in hindsight, when I was watching it, I noticed it felt kind of like the start of the tone that you see that went through a lot of 11's era and to some extent 12's era.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when I was watching it, I was actually going to ask you if Moffat had written these episodes because I wasn't paying attention to like know that he had. Because, well, you know, obviously there's the thing with the River Song, and I'm like, oh, to set this up, like, but you know, they wouldn't set up something this big without like knowing it was going to pay off in some way. So I sort of figured it must have been Moffat at the very least, like adding that part into the episode, if not being the one writing the episode, and knowing this was like him, like went around the time or I don't know if it was around the time, but by this point he had already been announced, and it's sort of like a bridge almost. It's like saying this is the direction I'm sort of going to take the show. It's almost like a preview for like his era of stuff, and I totally agree with the tone and stuff. Just like, I mean, even looking at the set design, or like how the episodes look visually is a lot like starting to lean towards Moffat stuff. It's sort of this in between stuff where you have a bit of the like, you know, the lighting and darkness of RTD, but without like the grunginess. Like if you look at the set design, it's a lot more of the like CG landscapes and stuff that you know you sort of see with Moffat.
Yeah. It's interesting too because I believe Journey's End was supposed to be RTD's last episode, and then being the self-indulgent man that we all know he is, he's like, actually, okay, I'll do some more.
Also, I think at this point it wasn't confirmed that, it wasn't confirmed that 10 was leaving, because I do know he had a plan for like a series, like a fourth series with 10, which would go into like, if we're looking at this episode as it was being produced, it makes more sense that River recognizes him but doesn't know that he wouldn't recognize her, because to us, who in the year of our Lord 2020, we're like, well, yeah, this is the first time on screen that she's meeting him, but as of yet they hadn't exactly planned that far ahead. Steven just knew, here's this River Song character, and boy would that go places.
Yeah, I'm still thinking about like, how the fuck does Big Finish rectify the fact, because I know there are like 8 stories where River Song shows up or shit like that. Like, how the fuck do they rectify that? Because canonically that's not supposed to work. Maybe it's just like a cameo or something. I don't know, I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, that is a bit confusing. I was that's another thing I was wondering, like, wait, like, because I remember you'd mentioned that there's a lot of River Song stuff in Big Finish, and I was wondering, like, do they have her show up in like older Doctor stories? And if so, like, how do they explain that away? Because she says, you know, very explicitly, this is before the Doctor knew who the fuck she was.
Yeah.
I think they get away putting her with like, I think she's done some stuff with 6 and with 8, and she either lies about who she is, like completely creates a fake persona, or just like memory wipes them, like retcon memory lipstick, whatever. That she has it in one of the episodes.
Okay, and In the one that I know, okay. Um erased memory, one occasion where she just said like it was just over audio so he didn't see her.
Yeah.
Um
See, but
yeah.
how did it doesn't make sense to me because how does she know to do that with like versions earlier than 10?
Have you
Because she
seen do you if you will remember in Husbands of River Song, she literally like pulls out like wallet photographs of 1 through 11. Like she knew about all of those existing. It was just like 12 or later that she didn't know like existed.
okay, but then how did she not recognize 10 and how did how, ah they just it doesn't make sense.
Don't think too hard about it.
It's
Some
early
of this
installment.
clearly wasn't intended.
Yeah,
Early
it's
installment
early
weirdness.
installment weirdness. Um, and that's we'll get more into it, but like River, in several instances, I was just like, if this was like Series 7 or Series 6 River, like there would be certain things that this River does that don't make like any sense. Um,
Yeah.
so we'll get more into that, but there were several points where I was just like, yep, this is the first time you were writing her, and honestly, it's probably my favorite version.
Except for Husbands, yeah.
Yeah.
Like River with 10, good. River with 12, absolute Kino swag poggers, hell yeah. River with 11, bleh.
River with 11 River with 11 outside of Series 5.
Yeah, okay.
I would
I'll
argue.
make
Well,
that
that's a whole thing. But yeah, on to the episode.
You know, I just can't wait until we get to the hour-and-a-half long episode devoted entirely to us beating the shit out of Let's Kill Hitler. God, is that a terrible episode.
It'll be the therapy we all needed.
Terrible episode. Bad enough that if I remember correctly, even Moffat's like, yeah.
That episode is not good.
Yeah. Even Moffat's like, yeah, I'm not very proud of that one. That one was rushed. And I'm like, oh, it was rushed, huh? Really fucking rushed, apparently. Anyways. But yes, it like the way that this starts off is just so like Moffat tropey here of involving the kid and having it set in like a different, like there being this intrigue of like, oh, what's going on, and setting it like from the perspective of a child and that sort of thing. It very much kind of sets up the fairy tale vibe that 11 had.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. The sort of moving towards like, well, you know, at one point River even calls him the Impossible Man, like moving towards that like teen girl fantasy, pixie dream guy version of the Doctor who swoops in and saves all the kids from the things. It's like very, you can kind of start to see it taking place here, just like in the way this episode is written.
Yeah.
Like, you know, when I think about this episode mentally, what I'm comparing it to is Impossible Planet Satan Pit, because that is like sort of a very RTD equivalent setup of like Doctor gets onto a two-parter where the Doctor gets onto a planet and some unknown shit is going down and killing people. And you know, you sort of think about how that episode, that story plays out.
Even Empty Child tonally, though I believe RTD has literally said like, I did not touch Moffat stories, like those are the one places where we know he had as little influence as possible because he didn't touch those because he thought they were all fantastic.
Yeah.
Even Empty Child has, there's like bits of it that you can tell, like Everybody Lives, stuff like that, but there's still like parts of the tone that are like very different to this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very, like, at that point, it's still very much firmly RTD show, and I think, you know, Moffat obviously knows that, so he tried to write it in line with sort of what RTD was going for. And you obviously get that sense they're coworkers. They they know how to write a show. And so, but now in this part, it's sort of like he's starting to set up that transition of like, okay, well, this is going to be my show. What direction do I want to take it? And he's like pushing it further in that direction. And it's sort of
Mm-hmm.
getting away from that like really dark, or not like dark, but very like serious and like almost morbid tone of like Impossible Planet, toward this more sort of like, I don't want to say lighthearted because it's definitely not lighthearted, but it's more adventurous.
I would agree with that. There's a bunch of invocation of tropes that we obviously know
Yeah.
prop up like
Things
a
that
lot of the
weren't
Smith
tropes
era.
yet, but are Moffat tropes now.
Yeah, so it's like looking back, it's like there were some points where I wanted to be annoyed, but at the same time I was just like, well, wait a minute. He was still like in his prime. Sherlock wasn't like also dogging on him yet. It's like this is I was okay with it here, but I knew how worse and how leaned upon. Like the fact that there wasn't a side character like River Song, including River Song, or just like the quirky just Moffatisms that were like oversaturating all of it, and the fact that 10 was still 10 outside of like a few moments of like foreshadowing who 11 would be, like it was just the right amount, just the right amount. And I feel like if he had kept this balance like fairly, and maybe like what was mostly great in series 5, like the Smith era could have been a lot better. It just kind of like took a real left turn.
Certainly could have been less uncomfortably horny.
Yeah, true. True.
I'm gonna end up spending money on Series 7 at some point.
Oh God.
At least it'll probably be Patreon money. Thanks, guys.
What we do for content.
Anyways, but yeah, no, this pre-credit scene is just very like, you could replace 10 and Donna in this intro with 11 and Amy, and it would pull off exactly the same. So yes, then we have our credit sequence. They introduce the fact that they are at this library that is the size of a planet, which, interesting idea. I like it. It's a little bit like boomery in places of like, oh yeah, people will still always cherish like having a physical book. And admittedly, I say that as someone who actually buys vinyl because he likes getting like physical versions of music. But there's like,
it's cool when I do it, but not when the other people do.
Yeah. I liked the design of the city. It felt very Ecumenopolis, which for people who aren't wordsmith nerds, that's a city that's the size of a planet. The city is the planet. So that whole idea appealed to me. For the graphic design, not the graphic design, the computer graphics were on point there.
Yeah. I don't remember at one point where it is, but I'm just going to mention it because I remember it being it happens at one of those shots that's like the like on that like balcony. There is a fucking like a shot of like a computer keyboard that is very clearly like an iMac keyboard. Like, it's an iMac keyboard from 2008, but it's an iMac keyboard.
Apple keeps going. Painted. 51st century, baby.
On the note of like, you mentioned sort of the way the planet looks, and I sort of mentioned this earlier, but it's just that the greater reliance on CG is definitely a very Moffat thing. Like RTD, a lot of the times, his stuff is pretty much always like very physical sets, and they use physical sets here, but the landscape is entirely CG, and there's a lot more CG used for like just various random things, whereas before it would be like maybe the space is CG, and then like you'll have an enemy with like a bit of CG element to it. But this is like, nah, we're just gonna fuck shit up. And then there's parts of it that are really good, like the planet, and then there's just one really bad effect with
Yeah,
I don't remember her
the one
name.
I was thinking about, the one where it's like
With her
the part
face.
where they're no, it's the part where they're all like it's in Forest of the Dead, when it's the doctor and like the remaining archaeologists who are still alive, like running through like a tunnel, but it's from like a wide CG shot, and you can just see them in the corner walking around. It looks like that like one time they like tried to remaster the first 3 seasons of Red Dwarf by adding in really shitty CGI.
Yeah, I mean the one that really just stood up to me was really bad was her face in the computer. It was just
Yeah.
like you literally just took a smear tool to her face. Like you could have made it. You
Yeah.
could have been a bit more creative there.
Anyways, so yes, stuff at the book, the courtesy node. I do like how Donna is like, hey, what the fuck? Why does this have a human face in it? Because like there is this sense of like, yeah, cultural shift and all that, like cultures change and that sort of thing. But like, yeah, that would still like weird you out a little bit if you're realizing like I am talking to the puppeted like a computer, like using a puppet flesh avatar.
And one that the computer thinks that Donna will find pleasant, whatever criteria for that is.
Yeah, it's like, this also starts yet another thing of like, um, like the way that Moffat approaches horror, of making horror from the mundane, of how it is literally making afraid, like giving a scientific like Doctor Who-esque reason for being afraid of the dark.
Yeah, it's good, simple stuff. It's kind of seeing the trope of like you have the very simple imagery of a child in a gas mask, which is like kind of eerie, and then you have
Yeah.
statues that are weeping, and then you have this, and then you have, well, the silence are kind of again another left turn into like weird land that started okay and then like went off the cliff. But yeah, it's a trend that he's good at when he pulls it off. It's that very relatable, something's just a bit off type of thing.
Yeah. Um See, the doctor reveals that he's here because he got a message on the psychic paper, though from who he doesn't know. Um, there's already like this like instant like intrigue of like the girl in the pre credits scene, when her perspective is used as like whenever you see it from the doctor's perspective, it's like just like a robot node. um we get the first thing here. It's surprising that it was 4 seasons before they did like the official like, okay, the sonic screwdriver does not work on wood, which then Donna just like kicks down the door because of course it's Donna fucking Noble.
Good stuff. And something I could also see Amy doing.
Yeah. We get another recurrence of like, oh, it's the little shop joke. um
That was started by RTD, right?
yeah, that started in New Earth. um Flesh, yeah, there's the flesh node stuff, and we are introduced to River Song and her team of archaeologists. And I like how Ten is like literally like, oh no, you guys are archaeologists, aren't you?
And it makes sense when you think about it, because like, duh, of course a time traveler is not gonna have respect for an archaeologist. Like, he could literally just go back and check what happens. And I think that's a joke that comes up again. I don't remember which season, but it was under 11, where he's like looking at an archaeology museum in the 51st century, and he just looks at something. It's like, that's not right. When he looks at the like museum information,
it's like the fucking scene. It's like the fucking scene in like Thor Ragnarok, where Hela's going through like Asgard's vault, and she's like, useless, useless, fake.
Yeah, I think the episode you mentioned, Celeste, is literally like the next time we see her in the Byzantium, that whole adventure. But yeah, it was just, so here's a little aside, but it came up a lot during this episode. Tumblr ruined a decent chunk of 11 era for me, because I just remember there would be these posts.
There's that too.
Yeah, there would be these posts that would be just like, oh my god, Stephen Moffat is making all these connections, and then it would be like a picture of 10 saying, I'm a time traveler, I point and laugh at archaeologists, and then it would be the Demon's Run episode where 11 is pointing and laughing at Amy and Rory's kid. And they're just like, whoa, the connections, and I'm just like, guys, like,
it's not
good job.
Calm your fucking tits, Madison from Albuquerque, who is 12 years old.
Oh my... I hate how accurate that is.
But it like happened multiple times.
I know those people. I hung out with those people briefly at camp once.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Okay. And yeah, it was so funny to me, because
in like fucking 2012, 2013. Yeah, I remember those people.
I just discovered the basic of literary analysis. It's amazing. Yeah.
But yeah, no, good scene. And despite me making fun of those Tumblr people earlier, it is somewhat amusing that, like, the first word he ever says to River Song is "get out." Like, there's just that denial and pushback, and like, I think that for the most part is done well, especially knowing what else comes next. And by what else, I mainly mean skipping over most of 11 and going to Husbands of River Song, because goddamn that episode. But yeah, that's when the episode really starts, is when River and the company arrive.
What was I gonna say? Oh, I was gonna say, it could be worse as far as Tumblr goes. It could be insufferable Sherlock stands. Boy, am I glad we're not talking about that show.
No.
Say what we will about series 6 or 7, at least it wasn't as bad as how Sherlock like flamed, crashed, and burned in its last season.
Yeah, I'm glad I never got into Sherlock. The episodes were too...
The first season's good. The second season is fine. It's downhill after that.
And Benedict Cumberbatch has gotten much better work since.
Yes. So yeah, obviously it's interesting because it's also kind of like a minor setup of like, it's almost, oh man, what was I gonna say? It's almost like a setup for like Midnight, where like also here like people, it takes like a bit longer than usual for him to like establish like, guys, you need to listen to me, and of course in Midnight he never establishes that.
Yeah, and he has to get the help of someone he doesn't know, but is basically like, hey guys, shut up, trust him.
Yeah.
The part where she was like, I think it's like the billionaire guy, he's like, who's the doctor? And she's like, he's the only story you'll ever tell. I was just like, Yeah, that's an 11 line.
That's a big Moffat
Well,
like trope.
That's so Moffat. Yeah. Oh, and the part about like the doctor knows what it's or like everyone dies and the doctor knows this better than everyone, and I'm like, fuck you. I always hate that thing of like the doctor is like some immortal being who like knows how it feels to lose everyone. It's like
Yeah.
he's lived for like 2,000 years like after the next one, and it's like I'm pretty sure there's at least a few species that are living that long in the universe. Like, there are people who have
Yeah.
lived a lot longer and deserve that title of, like, knowing what it's like to see things die.
Yeah.
It's the fairy taleization of which I don't mind in
exactly.
series 5 because that's mostly
and
done well.
It's not as bad as how like Chibnall awkwardly like does his own fanwank version of the Cartmill master plan. In terms of like making the doctor overly important. But fuck, what was yeah. Also there was something else that was like that I was thinking about that was like, oh yeah, this is the first time it does this too. And I completely forgot it in that conversation. Oh well, it'll probably come back to me eventually, I hope. So yes, 10 briefly talks to the girl from the pre-credit sequence. I like how like everyone in that scene is like equally confused.
What I enjoyed was, or not enjoyed, but like I don't think there's a lot of cheating, like narrative cheating in what's going on. Like you can pretty much tell that there's something about this girl that's like in the computer or part of stuff, even though we don't get the whole picture. And I just, knowing from later episodes and seasons, like I think it's good that we mostly like stay away from the technobabbly bullshit, and it mostly is like, and that goes for the explanation of the monster too, but I appreciate a Moffat episode when it's this tight and like well thought out.
Yeah. Immediately after that, Miss Evangelista is immediately axed. I do like how I mean, I guess I'm moving a bit ahead of myself, but I do like how like that isn't the end, and she's just like despite being the first one to die, she has a bit more of a role than just being like the easily expendable first one who totally has a little bit of ship tease with Donna. And we are introduced to the thing of like, oh, which actually like the idea of like the data ghosts was something is like one thing that's like, oh yeah, that is significantly like darker than like Moffat's later stuff.
I just realized, doesn't he reuse that in the Angel two-parter where they're able to somehow fucking use their consciousness to talk to the Doctor, even though the Angels are like...
No, well, yeah, yes, there is that, and we'll talk about that later. But what I was specifically talking about was just the concept of the data ghost and like looping out and slowly degrading.
Oh yeah.
Actually, I don't know, Celeste, if you thought of this, but I fucking thought of like whatever that like album going around is, or like album series that I haven't listened to, but I've seen it going around.
The Caretaker, or the Caretakers everywhere at the end of time.
Yeah.
No, yeah, it makes sense here.
It's a similar concept, just significantly compressed. And yeah, Donna's like, that's the most horrible thing I've ever seen. Which, yeah. Like, there's something about, like, specifically Donna, where you get the sense that she and to, like, a little bit of a lesser extent, Martha is, like, is, like, the rawest emotional presence the show has had. And, like, the strongest, I guess, sort of like moral center for the show, especially in comparison to the Doctor, of how she is routinely the one who I feel like the most is like, yo, this is fucked.
Yeah, there's definitely an element of like trauma. Conga line first is Pompeii, then the Ood, then almost her family dying, then this. And then, like, being in a virtual world with fake children and a husband who's real, who she never meets. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just, like, damn. But she keeps going through it all. It makes her a good character, like someone you root for. And I also appreciated that scene because I could just imagine, again, like, if this was an 11 episode, he would, like, pull the companion aside and then, like, give a speech on why he should talk to her. And then she would talk to her. So it was just like, it was nice how truncated that was. And 10 being like, yep, she's dying. Help her. You know, this is it.
Yeah. Definitely. And we are introduced to the Vashta Nerada of basically these tiny organisms that hide in the shadows. And I do like the paranoia of, I feel like in a lesser episode, or like in something where he wasn't necessarily bringing his A game, or if it was a lesser writer, it would just be like, ooh, they're in every shadow, ooh. But instead it's like, they're not, but you'd never be able to tell.
Yeah, and credit to Moffat, he has never reused these monsters. They have never appeared in another televised story since then. So you see their impact, and you know it makes sense why they're this deadly this time, even though they normally aren't. So it's holy crap.
Yeah. Also, I like how, once again, 10 tries the fucking, like, teleport him out, emergency program 1 thing. But in this case, it doesn't work, and Donna gets... Whew. Donna basically gets teleporting accidented, which that's always horrific.
Yeah, I had a question about that. Like, I didn't really understand their explanation for why the computer would just be like, oh, need to take this person too. Like, if it was a fluke of the technology or whatever, I was just like, I mean, what they do with Donna is good, but I was just like, why? How?
Yeah, basically just like, yeah, we need to put him, we need to put Donna in the computer. We get the fucking, hey, who turned out the lights, which that also, something about that feels super Moffat tropey. I can't put my finger on it, but it does.
He has certain, like, I don't know if it's like slogans. It's almost like poetry, how he'll like insert these lines throughout an episode that like you get used to them and they like become part of the script. Like, are you my mummy? Don't blink. All of the sayings that people say when they die. There's more in the future that I can't think of right now, but it's a recurring thing. Oh, silence will fall is probably one of the more, like, just like these sayings that you could put on a shirt. But you know, like in certain instances they work. Like I don't complain about the "you are my mummy" thing. Sometimes it's good to repeat that, have that horror.
I like how you say you could put them on a shirt, because I in fact have a shirt with several of such of those things in the shape of the TARDIS, and it's one of the oldest shirts which we still have.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
my oldest shirt is a Doctor Who shirt too. It's a shirt that has like a wardrobe with like the Doctor's outfits up through 11 in them. So it is that lets you know how old that shirt. That shirt is literally like 9, 10 years old, because it
Oh
goes
yeah,
up to
no.
like, yeah, it goes up to like 11's green coat, which was series 6. So yeah, that's like, fuck, that shirt is like 9 years old.
Yeah, our shirt has quotes from like 9, 10, and 11, and
Yeah.
they say DW, but it's the logo that's DW in the shape of the
Yeah, yeah,
TARDIS.
yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah,
it's yeah,
yeah,
it's the 11 logo. Yeah.
yeah. And it's like and honestly, we were going to get rid of it, but it kind of works as a shirt because it's old enough that it's tight, and so you can see our chest in it better, and that's the majority of the reason we still have it. Hey.
Improvise,
Pog.
adapt, overcome. um, so yes, you know, Donna Noble has left the library, and that's our cliffhanger. So yeah, we then move on to Force of the Dead. We find out River has a squareness gun. Nice callback. I forgot about that callback too.
Apparently, there was like something like a concept Moffat like thought of like in some point during Eleven's era he would have like a basically like a Jack cameo where he would leave that gun in the TARDIS and then years later River would like find it while on adventures with
He was
11.
supposed to be in A Good Man Goes to War, I believe. And then I think
We
like
lost
Arrow
that
or
day.
something meant that he couldn't do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Arrow.
Arrow.
He is good in the first season of that show. Everything else is debatable.
Um. So yes, I do like. I like how like this episode is set up. Oh no, actually. It wasn't fucking Arrow. It was fucking Torchwood Miracle Day. Thanks a lot, RTD. Fuck.
That somehow hurts
Fucking-
worse. Actually, that
fucking
does hurt
Americans.
worse.
I say this as an American, but fucking Americans. Um But yes, I do like the whole like God, the first like 5 or so minutes of this episode where you see Donna's life and how it is eventually like literally revealed that like those jump cuts, they're meta jump cut, they are like diegetic jump cuts,
Yeah.
which is a fascinating like concept to write in, and one that no, I can't actually think of one other place where that's used off the top of my head, and that's when Doctor Strange is teleporting Thor around in Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Um
Benedict Cumberbatch, Sherlock, Doctor Who. We're bringing it back.
Yeah, we're bringing it back. Thor Ragnarok.
The Moffat Cinematic Universe.
The Taika Waititi Dr. Wen.
Please. God.
I mean...
Yeah.
You mean like as showrunner or as the Doctor?
Yes.
Fair enough.
Either or, honestly. Either could work. We get the first drop of... Oh, this was what it was. We get the first drop here of something that would really be a fucking thorn in Moffat's side later, which is the fucking bullshit, the Doctor's name thing.
Yeah. Again, it works here because it's not, like, overused, but the fact that there's the great intelligence thing, and then when does he actually tell River his name?
Fucking Series 7.
Fucking.
Yeah, actually, yeah, when does he? Because I was going to get to this later, but the name of the River in the name of the Doctor is somehow River from after she dies and gets put in the computer.
I knew that, yeah. It's...
I don't know how, but it is.
It's like, Doctor Who's normally, like, it varies. It's like medium science to soft science. That whole deal was like... I can't even describe how soft that is. It's just like, it's intangible science, is what that is.
Yeah. Yeah. More proof that, fucking... Series 7 is a garbage fire. Oh, I forgot to mention the guy from the Lux Corporation who's like, yeah, we have to, like, you have to sign all these contracts, and there's the perfect sassy shot of, like, 10 and Donna fucking tearing them up, like, at the same time, and just looking at him like, bitch, what?
I feel like that should be a callback to something, but I'm pretty sure that's the first time that happens.
No, it's just 10 and Donna being relationship goals.
True. Yeah,
honestly, as a highly aromantic individual, Don and the Doctor, Kino shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Fucking. Oh, so the funniest the thing reminded me actually of the contracts thing reminded me of at about the same time that I was watching the episodes, there was something going down on Twitter of some like jackass developer who unsurprisingly was a like creative director for a studio owned by Google Stadia, was made like a fucking terrible hot take about like Twitch streamers may be complaining about getting DMCA'd for using music, but really they should be worried about getting DMCA'd for playing games that they don't own. Proceeding him to get fucking bodied by ratios.
Yeah, that was incredible.
Like to the point where when you're getting bodied by fucking Darkside Phil, like, bro. Sit the fuck down.
Yeah, the billionaire in this two-parter is weird because he's introduced as like just like the typical asshole billionaire who's trying to protect his property, and then you like get to the reveal, which like humanizes him a bit, and then from that moment forward, he's like a good person. He like after everyone is saved and brought back, he's like hugging everybody. I'm just like. Maybe like if you were doing that,
that is kind of like it's a point where like the episode's like not quite as strong as it could have been.
And it's just like, oh, Severus Snape, jackass, but he did this one thing. He loves your mom. Amazing guy. bang up job, dude. It was. It wasn't as quite as bad as that because he clearly wasn't like a mega evil jackass, but it was one of those things where it was just like, okay, he's a B character, I get it, but whatever.
Yeah. So yeah, then we get more stuff with Donna, which is great. Like the way it builds this tension of like realizing like, oh, this, like, as Donna realizes like, oh, this is all like fabricated in a way that's like, it becomes like a runaway minecart that like once you start thinking about it, you can't stop, and once you can see through the cracks, like everything just collapses to pieces.
That was terrifying. That was like
Yeah.
out of the Matrix logic where it's just like you slowly realize your mundane life is a living hell.
Yeah.
Especially when you see all the kids.
Yeah. Also, like, what was I gonna say? Fuck. Also, yeah, like, yeah, her reaction to like losing her fake kids was like, "Whoa."
And the credit to the child actors, the fact that they were just like, hey, sometimes when you're not around, it feels like we're not around. Like, that's some existential shit. Like,
Yeah.
holy crap. The fact that they were able to convey that is just like, wow. But yeah, that whole section is done really well.
Yeah.
Like, fuck.
Yeah, I will say, like, just sort of the way the episode sort of uses its directing to indicate the dreamlike quality of like the computer storage, while also like hiding enough of what's going on, like through like, shots and stuff. Just like the way they're set up, they don't give everything away until it needs to be given away. Like with the kids, you'll notice that with the park scene, it sort of avoids looking at them, almost as if like Donna is avoiding looking at them. And it's like just this sort of subconscious thing where it really feels like you're in Donna's shoes for that entire section.
Yeah.
One thing I
Definitely.
will say,
And
the
and,
only
and how much how much Catherine Tate like sells how like horrifying it is.
oh yeah, like screaming bloody murder. Damn. Um, the one part the like fake world falls apart for me is just because Donna starts to figure out that it's fake. For some reason, this really upsets the kid and causes the planet to like almost explode. And I would get
Yeah.
how they explain it pretty well. Like if you have all those consciousness in your brain, you're gonna forget stuff. But it's like, but why are you destroying everything now? It was like one of those. Again, like this
Yeah.
episode's pretty tight,
Yeah,
but that's
Yeah, it's yeah, it's like one of those things where it's like it's it, it's not like Christmas Invasion level bad where it all falls apart when you really think about it. It was something where in the moment I'm like, okay, this works and keeps the momentum of the episode up.
and then this is around the time I believe where we get to the first instance of the Doctor using his name as a get out of jail free card, and then the subsequent scene.
Yeah, I commented on that. If this is the first time Moffat pulls the Doctor says who he is and uses that to either win the conflict or buy time.
Yeah, and then
And, like the fact that I realized this was here was like a moment where I was like, "Oh my fucking god."
and then like right after, or like very close to it, is the scene where we were talking about where River is explaining to Lux who he is. It's like, I've seen armies turn at his name. I've seen him, I forget what else, but it's, open the TARDIS with the snap of his fingers, which I don't care. That's kind of cool. That's the one thing I didn't mind, but it was just like, yeah, that's cool in concept, but we know how that turned out.
Yeah.
I think the line about snapping his fingers to open the TARDIS is funny to me because I was recently watching um series 9, and there's several points where Clara does that, and I'm like, that, I don't know why, but that occurred. The first that occurs to me is power creep, like in anime, where at
Yeah.
first it's a big
Yeah.
dramatic thing, but then like everyone can do it.
Yeah. I mean, in general, River Song is power creep personified, where she has, like, Mary Sue levels of, like, she can fly the TARDIS better than the Doctor. Fuck you, Moffat.
It's a River Song basically becomes like every cishet joke about like, oh, the wife is really in control, haha, nudge nudge.
Holy shit! Moffat's writing in series 5, 6, and 7 is like a walking, like, centrist boomer I just want a girl meme.
God.
Moffat is a confirmed wife guy.
I mean, yeah. Well, okay. No, but actually, though, Celeste, if you think about it, River, Amy, and Clara, he kind of is.
Oh, you think I'm not joking? Like, if you just look at how River is written, it is very clearly wife guy sort of stuff. Like, nudge nudge, always listen to the wife. She's the one who knows what's going on. Haha. Men are just stupid, stinky idiots who don't know what the fuck is happening, even when they're the most genius person in the universe.
It's so... I don't know how to describe it. It's like, I like River in this episode, and then I don't like her in everything else, pretty much, because I hate women.
Well,
no,
yeah.
not really. But got you there.
Bold of you to say so on the air.
No, I don't. But like, it's like the intrigue works, and like her saying spoilers works because, first of all, they're in a very tight situation. She has to, like, basically play serious with 10. She knows she can't fool around with him. But it's like Moffat, instead of deciding to further characterize River in any subsequent appearances, just decided to exaggerate the playful spoiler nature into an uncomfortably horny territory. And somehow 11 goes along with that and is, like, intrigued by that. Which I can understand in concept of the Doctor basically being attracted to someone because they constantly keep him on his toes, which like rarely happens. But the way it's executed is like fucking terrible.
11's major turn-ons are absolute constant confusion.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. And then it's like, oh yeah, 11 was like totally attracted and married a psychopath. Like his last episode, he's just like, yeah, totally married the psychopath that was created to kill me. It's just, from here, there's a lot of potential, and again, seeing where it goes.
I forgot about that line.
I know, it's so bad. It's so bad. It's and she's not played like that. She's kind of blunt. She's kind of playful, but she's all business.
Yeah.
She was hired for something. She knows not to, like, dick around. But everything else is just like, yeah, I killed someone. And, like...
And in many cases, it's missed potential, too, because it is still at the point where a lot of this stuff happened off screen, I guess, because Moffat went a different direction with River's character, and River was never a full-time companion. Like, the fact that River wasn't a full-time companion meant that he could just kind of go buck wild with making her a ridiculous, stupid Mary Sue. And, like, doing, like, dumb shit.
And one thing I forgot about is that she doesn't kill anyone. Whereas, like, in the future, she's just like, yeah, I have a gun. And then in Husbands, one of the few parts I don't like about Husbands is she, like, casually talks about, like, just a whole lot of murder. And how she'll just, like, hook up with anybody. And that isn't, like, a slut-shamey thing. It's just, like, so out of left field.
I think, yeah, I mean, I think it's supposed to portray like where she is at that point in her life and how she thinks like she's reached the last, like she knows she's getting to the end of it, and probably hasn't seen 11 as much. Yeah,
that's fair. I don't know. Looking ahead, it's just like I wish we got more of this River song, because we basically don't. The closest we get is the 12 episode, and in series 7 where she's already dead, and like I don't know, it's sad because there's a lot to like here, especially with her chemistry with 10. Like, if David Tennant had done a 4th season and River's song was basically untouched, I probably still would have liked it more because 11 and River just don't have as much chemistry as 10 and River, or 12 and River.
Especially because he looks like he could be like 11, at least in series 5, looks like he could be her like gangly like child. It's weird, okay?
No, yeah, he
kind of is.
11. I'll get into this. This is going off on a whole thing, but I think 11 and River would have worked if like 11 normally had that like very childlike alien persona, but when he was around her, he would be like almost completely different. Like he would act his age. Yeah. But also, they didn't do that.
There is I don't know how much he'd planned, but I do know that like one of the people that Moffat had strongly considered for 11 was Capaldi, but he decided to go with someone younger, and Matt Smith really blew him away in auditions. And I guess he was like, I want to get on this now where he's not busy and is still like a complete unknown.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know. Imagining Peter Capaldi with Amy and Rory is like, that's an idea right there. But yeah, we still got him.
Yeah.
Anyways, back to the show.
Yeah. Obviously, River sacrifices herself to save 10. And again, it's like this late period River that I think I like a lot more. Like it's also in Husbands, where like there's like a whole different like dynamic. Based on the wording, like it's interesting. Like obviously we know that like showing up with the new suit and the tie and going to like the Towers of Beryllium, that ended up being 12. And I wonder if Moffat had intended, like, it's weird to tell whether or not Moffat had intended this to be 10, or if Moffat had intended this to be a vague future incarnation.
Yeah, that's tough. Also, another trivia thing, this is apparently the first time that the exact line of time can be rewritten, like that motif, apparently, like, that shows up a lot more in 11's time and stuff, but like this is the introduction of that whole idea, and I love the River death scene. It is practically perfect. Her emotion and 10 basically begging to know who this person is, and him being so destroyed by the fact that she knows his name, like someone he's never even met, and how intimate that is. It's a little weird going back to Husbands of River Song, where I don't know, there was some sort of cheapening of it where River's like, there are stories about us, and it says, after this is when I die, or something like that. It's just, it kind of ruined how she didn't see it coming at all. They just like had to poke at the like, hey, this is significant when you didn't need it. It's still a good ending, but that's kind of just bugged me since Husbands, that she like had an idea this was coming.
Yeah. And it does pay off really well in Husbands, of how like it pays off because the viewer knows that this is like one of the last things that happens to River before her death, and you have that payoff of again of how long does a night in Beryllium last, and it's 24 years, which is like possibly one of the best pieces of emotional payoff in the entire show.
Oh yeah.
But yes, obviously, and then he has his everybody lives moment because all the people who were trapped in the library get teleported out, trapped in the computer get teleported out again, including Donna. Although there is this weird moment where like the episode kind of doesn't acknowledge that it's been a century and probably everyone they knew and loved is dead. But that would be that wouldn't be nearly as chipper an ending. So
And he also doesn't give the satisfaction of like having Donna see the guy. That was an interesting.
Yeah, I do like the fact that the that character is entirely Donna's fabrication. Never was real. It's a very interesting choice.
Here's another interesting choice. So I was researching while we were recording and found this out. The Dr. Moon guy was initially at some point intended to be the mind of the Doctor uploaded into the thing after his final death as the 45th Doctor. So, like, there was a point where he saved his own ass to this computer to live with his wife. What we knew to be his wife. I like that they didn't do that, especially because that would basically, like, break the show even more than it already has broken itself if they ever got past 45. Which would still be a while from now, but it's like, yeah, I totally understand why they wouldn't codify that or do anything with that. It was just like an interesting thing that I was just like, Moffat, you crazy bastard.
Yeah. So yeah. And then obviously the Doctor saves them all by uploading them all back into the computer so they can all live happily ever after in their own perfect computer world.
The Doctor doesn't like endings.
Yes.
Moffat quote.
Which
plug.
that
was a very Moffat thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. But yes. So yeah. Anything else before we move on to ratings?
I'm good.
All right. Yeah. It's just a really good, like, Moffat story. Obviously it foreshadows where the show would be going, but I think in the way that it pulls it off, it manages to stand with like series 5 as like the cases where the application of that tone was actually good and not a constant cringe fest. Like, yeah, it's good. River Song's actually good in it. The Vashta Narada are an interesting foe. Catherine Tate, once again, is the best thing that ever happened to this show outside of Peter Capaldi and Pearl Mackie. Yeah, it's great. Like, obviously there's some flaws in it, and I don't think I'd rate it as highly as like some of like I wouldn't rate it necessarily as high as like Moffat or the two as highly as Blink or the two-parter that was in this slot last season, Human Nature, but is still a very, very solid A, maybe even like an A+, light A+.
Yeah, this was an interesting installment. It definitely foreshadows a lot of what is to come, both the good and the bad. Everything is pretty like tight. There's only one or two character and like plot like issues, and those are mostly like you don't notice them in the moment. The cast, like the side cast, is good. All the side characters I enjoyed and felt for their deaths. 10 is on point, especially being given the challenge of like being more personally and emotionally like touched and affected than he usually is. Catherine Tate knocks it out of the park. Alex Kingston gives what my opinion would probably be either her best or her second best River Song performance in this two-parter. Maybe this isn't fair on the episode, but a lot of the potential of River Song and of the Moffat storytelling is kind of like soured, especially by Series 6 and Series 7 and where they go with her. So whereas before I probably would have rated this episode like an A+, I'm gonna dare to rank it an A-, just because there's potential that I know wasn't fulfilled on, basically.
I'm in a very similar position. I think it's a very good episode. Obviously, it's a very iconic and classic episode of sort of the 10 era. But I'd sort of agree. I'd say when you stack it up against some of the like the 10s in Doctor Who, you see a few places where it's lacking. Just like besides River Song, there's not really any other side characters that do too much. I mean, you have a couple that have a bit to them, but like considering it's a two-parter compared to like what we've seen from two-parter characters before, it's just not that much. But overall, it's still like really fantastic story. I think it's really well written. There are some Moffatisms there that, in retrospect, kind of make you go like, eh. But in context, I think they work fine. They work well. They work well for what they're meant to do. So I'd say a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, definitely. Next week, we will be talking about probably something that I think will get very high marks from all of us, and is probably one of the darkest episodes of New Who with Midnight. Yeah, definitely excited to watch that one again. So yeah, until then, it's time to move on to our next segment. So this week we are discussing Torchwood Series 2, Episode 10, From Out of the Rain by P.J. Hammond. I said last week that this episode and the next episode I never actually saw, and I just skipped straight to the finale two-parter thingy. So I watched this episode, and at the end of it I walked away and was like, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah.
It's a very
I was just like, what the hell?
Kind of a trip of an episode.
Yeah. I'm like, what? Like, admittedly, like, I was like multitasking at the time and like playing like Black Mesa and shit at the time. But like, even then, like, I followed the plot and then I thought about it and I'm like, what the fuck?
It's like they had a concept and then only like filled it in 60% of the way.
Yeah.
It's just like the whole thing of them
bad. It just feels kind of like, yeah, it feels like scattershot.
It feels like a crayon drawing of an episode.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's a very impressive crayon drawing, Timmy, but you didn't finish it.
It's the whole thing, like, I can imagine just the concept of, like, okay, old carny people in, like, modern day. Sure, that's, like, off-putting, but it's like, how did they get there? Who the fuck knows? I thought the like whole breath
they were captured
thing...
in the film strips, and then when they played the film strips, their phosphorescent essence was released.
Now that's what we call
form.
In the industry. That's what we call an ass-pull.
Yeah, like I think I missed like the specific part of the episode where they explain that, because I remember spending a decent amount of the episode going, are they aliens? Like, what the fuck? Like, are they aliens? Or not? Like, why can they do the fucking, like, breath? Like, what? How the fuck does this work?
They really do not explain it well. they have an essence that can get captured on film. That's the amount I got out of it. I tried to pay decent attention because I honestly liked a decent amount of the episode, but it was just sort of this curiosity of like, is this going somewhere? Like, this feels like it could be a thing, but I'm kind of confused what's happening, and they just kind of didn't do anything with it.
The fact that like that you see Jack in the initial like film reel, but it's film of him at a different, like with a different group of people, and not the, what do they call them, night terrors or whatever the fuck. It was just like, why is he there? Is it just to like have him know what the fuck he's talking about when we need him to exposit what these people are? It was just, it felt like it was like a bad concept, like a half-baked concept executed very competently, which is where the weird dissonance comes in.
Yeah. Um Definitely. Like really, like the thing that like really like stuck out to me from the episode was like, yeah, okay, it's an interesting concept, you know, the funfair thing. I like the fact that Jack was there and it's like the man who can't die, and you see this kind of like macabre like footage of him like pointing a gun at his head, and the fact that it actually like has Ianto in it as a sort of major character, and possibly has my new favorite Ianto scene where they're all running with the film, and it's like, who's got it, and then like Gwen's like running with the film, and like the like Carney guy like takes it, and he's like, he's got it, and then Ianto like grabs it out of his hand and keeps running. He's like, I got it.
The ending is so like, it's such a non-ending was my whole thing.
Yeah, the ending is like most of them
Five people die. Yeah, and like I was like, what the fuck? You just killed like 5 people off.
No, not just people, children.
Yeah.
They're like, oops, we failed to save 5 of the children, but it's okay because we saved one of them.
That was such.
I'm just like, what the fuck? That's like the same thing as like when we were fucking talking about like the in like the library episode. I was like, yeah, okay, they're all alive, but like everyone they knew is dead, and it's 100 years in the future. Like, where the fuck are they gonna go?
Yeah.
And this one is just, no, they just died.
Yeah, it's just like 5 people just died.
It's like, narratively, if you're gonna kill that many people, it's like, this is the end. You don't kill them to like establish stakes, just that like you can't have a complete victory, and then you walk in and it's like the only one alive is one of the kids of that whole family that was with the breathalyzer. Fucking who the fuck cares? But it's like, okay, so you're alive, but all of your immediate family is dead. It was just like,
yeah, it's
what's
like,
what's the thematic reason? There is none.
Like, yeah, it's like, if you actually stop to think about it, it is actually more horrifying than if all of them just died, honestly.
And then that's not even the end, because the best part is like, oh, maybe they could be back someday, and then it like literally fucking shows someone that moment getting it.
They're never coming back. They're never coming back.
Thank God. I was just imagining.
Not only is the show dead, if the show was still alive, they wouldn't have come back.
There are many stories in Torchwood, I feel like, where if the Doctor was like around for whatever reason, he would basically be able to solve it like in the span of 45 minutes. And I feel like this is one of them where he would just be like, well, this is stupid. How the hell? Oh, they found this little toy? Okay, break.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh my God. Like, it wasn't terrible. It wasn't insulting. It wasn't something that I was like actively hating or disliking watching. It was just something where I was just like, why is any of this happening? Like, I'm moderately entertained, but why is any of this happening?
Yeah, that's literally my vibe too. Like, it didn't lose my attention. I was paying attention the whole time.
You just like, it felt like it didn't have your attention because like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah, you felt like you were spacing out and missing things. But you weren't actually?
Yeah.
Like, okay, here's the most what the fuck moment that doesn't even, like... So, the part where Tosh is like, I'm picking up the ocean or the water, like, in the middle of town, and then that amounted to, like, nothing. Just like, the ocean is in the middle of the city. Okay, why? What? Does that matter later? No. Like, there were just, like, small moments of that throughout the entire thing that I was just like, where is this going? How is this going? Who thought of this?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's like I'm not really like as far as the 2 episodes that I haven't seen go so far, I don't really feel like I like made a bad decision in skipping this one because like what the fuck, like I guess spoiler alert for my rating, this rating gets a question mark out of question, like what? There's nothing there for me to rate other than like events that happen and a nice Ianto scene. What the fuck happened?
Yeah, it wasn't offensive, and I wasn't bored. You get a nice out of try.
It was 45 minutes of it was 45 minutes of television. Wasn't very coherent 45 minutes of television, but it was 45 minutes of television.
It was not Miracle Day. That's my rating.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, that's fair. Not Miracle Day out of Torchwood.
God.
Celeste, what's your rating?
My rating is this was an episode out of 10.
All right. So, next week we will be discussing Series 2, Episode 11, Adrift. I've actually heard a lot of good stuff about this. I've never seen it, so who fucking knows how this one's gonna go. Anyways, until then, you can follow the podcast on Twitter at Beat2TARDISPod, and you can support us on Patreon for a number of benefits like early access to episodes, the ability to listen in live to the show, and potentially even the ability to guest star on an episode of your choosing. I'm Jeff. You can follow me on Twitter at WheatleyDL.
I am Stephen Moffat's Boomer Comics. You can find me at SkyHigh9_5.
My wife, it's a me, Celeste, and you can find me at QuixoticQueers on Twitter.com.
All right. And we will see you all next week.